I just have to talk about Russian disinformation because the people peddling it are not on my side of the aisle. Senior Democrat leaders, including Ranking Member Peters, were involved in a process of creating a false intelligence product that was supposedly classified. They leaked to the media that accused Senator Grassley, the President Pro Tem of the Senate, and myself of accepting and disseminating Russian disinformation from Andrei Derkach. I'd never heard of the person until they brought it up. Senator Peters introduced that false information, Russian disinformation, into our investigation record. 50 people associated with the intelligence community after our Hunter Biden investigation and the revelations of the Hunter Biden computer said, oh, this is Russian disinformation. Now we find out, no, it's a real investigation by the Justice Department. So it's just galling, and I just have to point out that the purveyors of Russian disinformation, Hillary Clinton's campaign, the DNC, the Steele dossier, the Ranking Member Peters accusing Senator Grassley and I of disseminating Russian disinformation, that's where the disinformation is coming. That's where the false information, the lies, the false allegations. I can't sit by here and listen to this and say that this is not disinformation, this hearing today. This is getting information we have to take a look at to restore confidence in our election integrity. We're not going to be able to just move on without bringing up these irregularities, examining them, and providing an explanation, and see where there really are problems so we can correct it moving forward. Senator Paul.
Mr. Chairman, I got to respond to that. I mean, you're saying I'm putting out information. Well, one, it had nothing to do with this report.
You lied repeatedly.
I did not.
You lied repeatedly in the press that I was spreading Russian disinformation, and that was an outright lie, and I told you to stop lying, and you continue to do it.
Mr. Chairman, this is not about airing your grievances. I don't know what rabbit hole you're running down.
You talked about Russian disinformation.
Down rabbit holes.
Senator Paul.
This is simply not what we're dealing with.
Paul.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you can't make these false allegations and then dropping it there. That is why this committee needs to return back to its partisan things. This is terrible what you're doing to this committee and all the great work that you talked about.
It is what you have done to this committee.
It is not
falsely
the case.
accusing the chairman of spreading disinformation. Nothing could have been further from the truth, and you're spouting it again, which is why I had to respond. Senator Paul.
Mr. Chairman,
Judge Storm.
This is outrageous.
Judge Storm. It's been alleged that 60 courts have refused to hear these cases. Therefore, there was no fraud in the election.
And despite the title of today's hearing, there were no widespread election irregularities that affected the final outcome. These claims are false, and giving them more oxygen is a grave threat to the future of our democracy. Now, I understand the chairman's desire to ensure our elections run smoothly, and I agree that we need to restore faith and trust in our election process. But I'm concerned that today's hearing will do more harm than good by confusing a few anecdotes about human error with the insidious claims the president has aired. Mistakes do happen in elections, but there's a difference between a clerk making an error that gets caught and corrected during routine audits and calling the entire election fraudulent or stolen when there is no evidence just because you do not like the outcome. Amplifying these obviously false narratives about fraud or irregularities corrodes public trust. It threatens national security, and it weakens our democracy and our standing around the world. Every time the president or his followers make these false claims, they destabilize our relationships with our allies and allow authoritarian adversaries to undercut American democratic leadership around the globe. Democracy and a free society are not guaranteed. We have seen democracies around the world crumble because of similar words and actions. When executives abuse their power, when political leaders work to stifle the free press, and when they delegitimize the principle of one person, one vote, it puts our country on a dangerous path towards authoritarianism.
Here's Republican Senator Ron Johnson digging in his heels, defending himself from accusations of spreading disinformation, while quite literally spreading disinformation in this very forum. First off, bringing up voting irregularities despite having zero proof of voting irregularities isn't helping restore trust in the electoral process, it's the opposite. He's actually fomenting distrust by continuing to air these claims, even though the issue has already been adjudicated in court. In none of the 59 cases around the United States were any of the Trump campaign or Trump allies' claims of fraud proven. None. And that was while arguing to judges that Trump himself appointed, including in Johnson's own state of Wisconsin, in Georgia on the 3rd Circuit Court, the 11th Circuit Court, and the United States Supreme Court. They had almost 60 opportunities to litigate what Ron Johnson is pretending is still up for debate here. It's not. And his efforts to suggest that it is are exactly the disinformation that he's accusing Democrats of spreading. Now, as for the claims about Hunter Biden, because what else would we be talking about other than this Judge Jeanine Fox News rabbit hole? Johnson points to the fact that there's a DOJ investigation into Hunter Biden as some sort of proof that he was right about Hunter all along. But the mere presence of an investigation at the Justice Department isn't proof of anything, especially a Justice Department that was led by Bill Barr and effectively another arm of the White House. That isn't evidence of any crime by Hunter, it's evidence that a bunch of partisan hacks opened an investigation into their political enemies. That is a Tuesday in the Trump era, and pretending otherwise is as disingenuous as it gets. Consider too that having this investigation isn't so much about the result of the probe as it is being able to point to it and say, look, an investigation, Hunter Biden must be guilty, we told you, which is literally what Ron Johnson is doing right now. That is the point of Trump's DOJ conducting this probe. It's the optics of some nefarious activity by the evil Democrats. It doesn't matter what the probe actually finds, or even if the investigation doesn't go beyond day one. All people like Ron Johnson need are the soundbite, and they know the conservative media spin machine will take it from there. So I really hope you're ready for a decade of hearings about Hunter Biden, because this is what the right thrives on. They pick out obscure figures, take a deep dive into baseless rabbit holes, and prop up every conspiracy theory under the sun. All while in reality, the ones who should actually be vilified are the ones spreading disinformation. People like Ron Johnson, who are claiming election fraud despite there being zero evidence of fraud. Again, if their concerns were legitimate, they'd accept the results once they were litigated in the appropriate venues. But that they continue to surface these claims even after they've been debunked is all the proof you need that it was never about uncovering the truth, it was simply about perpetuating the lies. And Ron Johnson knows this, but his priority isn't protecting the sanctity of our elections or our democracy more broadly, it's kowtowing to Trump, period. He's just another lackey who's willing to burn it all to the ground to stay in the good graces of a guy who just lost the election by 7 million votes. And frankly, Johnson will need all the help he can get, because the next midterm cycle, he's up for re-election in a state that just elected a Democratic governor, a Democratic senator, and a Democrat for president. And a far-right conspiracy theorist perpetuating disinformation isn't exactly the best position to stay in power. So let's hope Ron Johnson enjoys the circus he's creating, because it'll likely be his last. If you like this video, please check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, where I take a deep dive into the week's most important stories and interview major players in politics, including Kamala Harris, Katie Porter, Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, Eric Swalwell, Mary Trump, Al Franken, Cory Booker, and many, many more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts.